Yes, thank you. Thank you. Welcome to everybody. My topic is the following. Only political institutions can protect our health. After the attack on the New York Twin Towers in 2001 and the financial and economic crisis in 2007 and 8, the pandemic generated by coronavirus this year is the third event of global dimensions since the beginning of the millennium, which knocks over our expectations, upsets our habits, and endangers our lives. The growing severity of those crises shows that the world is lacking appropriate regulations bodies. Said in simpler terms, it needs a government. No country can win the battle against the virus alone. The destiny of humankind is indivisible. The epidemics are events that have the deepest impact over the course of human history. But governments have not drawn the lesson from the experience of the past. They have been caught surprised, unaware, and unprepared, and reacted late and divided to the attack of the virus. The unprecedented severity of the current crisis lies in the combination of two crises, the health and the economic one. The fear to generate panic in the public opinion has refrained governments from taking action. Governments have resorted to border closures, a useless provision adopted when the contagion had already spread worldwide. The decisive event that pushed governments to act in the interest of the public health was the market crash, which is a confirmation of the weight of the economic interests of markets in the decision-making of governments. So we can draw from these events four main lessons. First, health is a public good which cannot be protected by market mechanisms. And in fact, we have seen in the age of neoliberal globalization, that the main trend was cutting healthcare budgets. So we should invert this trend towards cutting healthcare budgets and stop them as soon as possible. The second lesson is that the pandemic has produced symmetric shocks on the global economy, with similar consequences on all countries, both emerging and developed economies. And in fact, history shows that pestilences like wars are great equalizers. Therefore, a global coordinated response is necessary, coming from the world organizations, first of all, the World Health Organization. The third lesson is the re-evaluation of the role of scientists, discredited by populism, who has classified them in the negative pantheon of the elites. Even though the coronavirus is a new pathogenic germ which has found scientists unarmed, they in fact, they do not have neither specific drug to heal the illness, nor vaccines. In spite of that, people's trust in science lies in the fact that it elaborates a shared knowledge built on the basis of experiments and evidences, which are the objective criteria of truth. From it, we have learned that the coronavirus comes from the animal world. It is the even more intense exploitation of planetary resources, deforestation, desertification, urbanization, overpopulation, livestock farming that created opportunities for the microorganisms to come closer to human population. So these emergencies, the health and economic emergencies, should be addressed together. The fourth lesson is that the emergency powers granted to governments to combat the pandemic could become permanent constitutional changes. It is to be feared that the exit from the pandemic will give us back citizens available to surrender their freedom, their privacy in exchange of security, and to concentrate powers in few hands. We have seen, for instance, in Hungary, that the premier, Viktor Orban, has obtained full powers for an indeterminate time. And the Freedom House Institute has stated recently in his research report that Hungary is the first EU member state to leave the club of democracies. Therefore, the emergency powers granted to governments should be submitted to parliamentary control and have a temporary character. The response of the European Union to the emergency marks an awakening, an extraordinary awakening of European solidarity, even though this is not perceived largely by the public opinion. The European Council, the meeting of the head of state and government, paralyzed by cross vetoes and unable to decide, has entrusted the European Commission, European Executive, with the task to elaborate a plan for a recovery fund. This means that the coronavirus crisis has triggered off two potentially revolutionary facts. First, the shift of the EU decision-making power from the European Council to the European Commission, which is evolving gradually but progressively into a true European government. Second, the recovery fund that the European Commission will submit to the European Parliament for approval represents an unprecedented increase of the European budget. The own resources are supposed to amount to a figure of 1.5 trillion euros, a never seen figure so far. So the European Union could become a budgetary union with budgetary powers shared with the European Council, as is the case in all federations which have a parliamentary body and the Chamber of States, which is the European Council, in fact. The European Commission President, Mrs. von der Leyen, in her intervention at the European Parliament, recently evoked the precedent of the Marshall Plan, which mobilized an enormous amount of money for the recovery of Europe after the devastations of World War II. She strengthened her commitment to struggle against the coronavirus. She quoted the authors of the Ventotene Manifesto, Altiero Spinelli and Ernesto Rossi, who in 1941 invited the European citizens to be ready for the new world that is coming, that will be so different from what we have imagined. And we have to imagine a new world exiting from the coronavirus pandemic. Monnet, Jean Monnet, one of the fathers of the European Union, was used to say that Europe will be forged in crisis and will be the sum of the solutions adopted for those crises. The coronavirus crisis confirms this statement, since it offers an unprecedented opportunity to move towards an increase of the European budget on resources never seen before, and the creation of a EU fiscal power, a step on the way of European federation. But I cannot conclude without mentioning the worldwide dimension of the crisis and the worldwide necessary response to the crisis. And so, quoting the necessity to strengthen and democratize the World Health Organization, which should become a coordinating propulsion core of an effective global response to the challenge of the coronavirus in terms of capacity to alert member states on the threats to public health and to disseminate reliable information on the pandemic, of coordination and promotion of vaccines and drugs research and distribution of health care equipment. In order to carry out these tasks, it should receive more financial resources, more financial resources. Its powers should be strengthened, and it should be endowed with the same degree of autonomy enjoyed by the central bank in order to be independent of national governments.